Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we'll discuss the salivary gland diseases. Now, among the salivary gland diseases, parotid gland is very important. And the diseases which are usually you will face in the examination or in the viva, like the parotitis, like the xerostomia, like the Sjogren syndrome. These are the few diseases which you will encounter in the OPDs and the wards. So now the salivary glands. Before taking the topic, we will discuss the anatomy of the parotid gland, then the submandibular salivary gland, then the minor salivary gland, that you may understand very easily the disease, because we know the anatomy, then you will know the pathology very easily. Now this is the parotid gland. Now salivary glands are divided into one are the major salivary glands and the minor salivary glands. Now major salivary glands are those glands which has the ducts, and the minor salivary glands are those which does not possess the duct. Now the major salivary glands are like the parotid gland, submandibular salivary gland, and then the minor salivary glands are those which are present in the posterior wall of the pharynx and the oral cavity. These are called the minor salivary glands because they does not possess the duct, whereas the parotid gland and submandibular salivary gland they possess the ducts. That's why they are major salivary glands. Now the parotid gland, which is present in front of your auricle, now this one is the ear, and this is the tragus of the ear. Now in front of tragus of ear, you have the body of the parotid gland, and this is the lobule, just crosses the lobule. Then the tail of the parotid gland come over the angle of the mandible. Now this one is the posterior part, and this is the anterior part of the parotid gland. From the anterior part of parotid gland, this is the parotid duct or the extension duct. This is very important because this parotid. Thank you. Now this is the auricle, and this one is the tragus, lobula. This is the area of the parotid, just at the lower border of tragus, lobule, and angle of the mandible. This is the area of the mandible. Posterior, this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So posterior border of the parotid gland touches the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid muscle up to the angle of mandible, and this is the auricle. So this is the area where you have the parotid gland, and in the parotid gland you have the one important nerve, which is the facial nerve. So usually in the case of the parotitis, whether it's viral, bacterial, sometime you will face the facial palsy, facial paralysis, where their face becomes very ugly looking, face because of facial paralysis. And you know the facial nerve has 5 branches over here. One goes toward the upper side, the ophthalmic branch is there, then mandibular branch is there, buccal branch is there, marginal mandibular, and the cervical. So this is very important nerve. If it is paralyzed due to the parotitis, then the face become very ugly looking. There's facial paralysis. Now the facial, this is the again the parotid gland having the cervical branch of the facial nerve. You see, cervical branch of facial nerve is very important because it supplies the platysma. Platysma is supplied by your facial nerve. If there is the parotitis, this branch is also affected. So there is the very painful situation, and the face becomes very in a tight position, and there the uh, face is tilted on the side where you have the because of a facial nerve does not work over here. The face become tilted toward the opposite side because of the pull of the opposite cervical fascia. Very painful situation. Then there's the retromandibular. Then there's the retromandibular vein is there, which is very important. This is the posterior belly of the digastric muscle. Posterior belly of the digastric muscle. And then there's the external carotid artery. You see, this is one is the external carotid artery, which is very, very important. So during the periodictomy, when you are doing the surgery over the parotid gland, you have to save the external carotid artery because it's very, very important. Otherwise, there will be the loss of the blood. Now these are the branches of certain facial nerve. One is the zygomatic branch of the facial nerve. You see, this is very important nerve, which goes to the upper part of your eyes, zygomatic branch of the facial nerve. Second is the transverse. This is the transverse facial artery, and this is accessory parotid gland. This one is the parotid duct, which is about 5 centimeter long and opens to the second upper molar teeth. And then the marginal mandibular branch. This one the this is the marginal mandibular branch of the facial nerve. Now, these are the certain greater auricular nerves there, parotid lymph nodes are there, skin and fascia. I am discussing over these structures because these are very, very important for the pathogenesis and for the diagnostic purpose and for the sign symptoms because of presence of the facial nerve in the parotid gland. You see, lymph nodes are also present in the parotid gland, and these are affected by even by your tuberculosis, even by lymphoma, and sometimes the diseases of the testes. These are also comes into the parotid area. So these lymph nodes are very, very important because these are the drainage areas from the ear, from the face, from the your skin of neck. So this lymph nodes are very, very important. Sometimes there is the lymphadenitis, means inflammation of the lymph nodes, like the tuberculosis, lymphoma, inflammations, and the secondaries in the lymph nodes, which also causes the paralysis of the facial nerve. If you treat properly the lymph node, then you will get the paralysis back. Otherwise, patient has a very ugly looking face. Now, this is one is the ramus of the this is usually these are teeth, and ramus or mandible is there. Then over there you have the masseter muscle and the medial pterygoid muscle. Then this is the mastoid process, sternocleidomastoid muscle, styloid process, then the internal carotid artery, which is very important artery. Yeah, this one. Now this one is the external carotid artery, very, very important artery, retromandibular vein, and then you have the facial nerve in between two. You see, this is the facial nerve there. This is the facial capsule. Now this is the it has two capsules, one is the false capsule and the true capsule, and one is the deep investing fascia of the neck region that form the capsule. So the true capsules are there, parotid area having the one capsule here, and then internal lining of the parotid fascia. That is the parotid fascia, that is the fascia of the parotid gland. Other fascia which comes from the neck region, deep investing layer of the neck fascia. This is one the parotid gland. You see, this is the parotid gland, and this is the parotid duct or extension duct which runs over the masseter muscle and pierces the buccinator muscle. Two muscles which are very, very important. It lies over the masseter and pierces the buccinator muscle, enters into the oral cavity at the second molar, upper second molar teeth. I am discussing this because these are very important. You see, this is the lymph nodes. Now the drainage areas from the ear, from the face, and sometimes from even testes. Carcinoma of testes, their secondaries comes into the parotid gland. This is very, that's why I'm discussing it, because you see this is the superficial temporal artery vein, you have to ligate it, otherwise you will face the bleeding. You see, this is the, again this one is the internal jugular vein is there. So these are the very important structure where you have to save it. If you know the anatomy, then you will dissect this very carefully. Now this is the again the extensor duct or the facial duct, which is 5 centimeter long. It emerges from the anterior border and runs superficial to the this masseter muscle, and then it pierces the buccinator muscle. Two muscles. One is the masseter. It just crosses the masseter and pierces the buccinator muscle. This one external auditory canal. In front of external canal, you have the parotid gland, very important gland which produces the saliva. Now this is the opening of the parotid duct. You see this is the opening of the parotid duct opposite the upper second molar teeth. This is the opening of the extensor duct or parotid over the second opposite upper molar teeth. This is the area which is very important. So the disease from the oral cavity like the bad oral hygiene, mucositis, inflammations, the dental caries, and the dehydration. Dehydration is very important. If you want to save the parotid duct, you have to get the patient be rehydrated. Because in the dehydration, the normal compensation of the bacteria of oral cavity they travel from this entrance of the parotid duct toward the parotid gland. So these diseases of the oral cavity they get traveling from this area toward the parotid gland and causes the perotitis. So 50% of diseases which inflict the parotid gland they come from the oral cavity due to the oral diseases. Now the interior supply, the extraocular artery and the retromolar vein where you have the venous drainage. Sensory supply, the auriculotemporal nerve, and then capsule is supplied by the greater radicular nerve. Now there is the sympathetic places around the external, this one is the external carotid artery, where you have the sympathetic plexus, and this is very important for the production of the secretion from the parotid gland, because parotid gland is the exocrine gland which is supplied by your autonomic nervous system, which keeps on its secretion, and sometimes it enables secretion because of the parasympathetic and sympathetic supply. Now the parasympathetic supply is there, secretomotor fibers that arise from inferior salivary nucleus in the medulla oblongata. Joins the glossopharyngeal nerve, that is the ninth cranial nerve, and leaves the ninth nerve through tympanic branch, which enters the middle ear where it joins the tympanic plexus. Nasal pituitary nerve arises from the tympanic plexus as a continuation of the tympanic branch. Enters the foramen ovale, relay in the outer ganglia. Giant auriculotemporal nerve through which they reach the gland. So in this way, your parotid gland is supplied by both sympathetic as well as parasympathetic supply to control the secretions. Now this is the tragus of the ear, and this is midway between the ala of the nose and the angula mandible. This is the line of the facial nerve supply. Now the parotitis. So this was the brief introduction of the parotid gland. Now we will discuss what is the parotitis. Now parotitis is an inflammation of one or both parotid glands. So today I will confine myself to the parotid gland, and next time we will discuss the submandibular ciliary gland, because these are very important. Sometimes you will get the short essays. What is parotitis? What is the etiology? What treatment? Or what is the parotitis with having the facial paralysis? So parotitis is inflammation of one or both parotid glands, basal ciliary glands located on either side of the face in humans. The parotid gland is the salivary gland most commonly affected by inflammation. This is the parotid gland is commonly affected by the inflammation because its duct is very often open, remain open, and that's why the inflammation goes travel easily. Now, peritonitis present swelling at angle of the jaw. Bacterial peritonitis present is unilateral swelling, where the gland is swollen and tender and usually produces pus at extension duct. I have shown you the extension duct or the duct which opens at the upper second molar teeth in the buccal sulcus of the oral cavity. Now this pus is usually sampled and the bacteria within are identified. Now during peritonitis, if you open the oral cavity of the patient and see the extension duct or duct, if you find the pus, then take the pus and send it for culture and sensitivity. Now this pus will show, culture will show the what kind of bacteria is there and which antibiotic will be preferable. So you should take the pus from the opening of the parotid gland, parotid duct, extensor duct in the oral cavity and send for culture and sensitivity. Culture will show which bacteria is there and sensitivity will show the which bacteria will activate which antibiotic will cover that organism. Now, this peritonitis is associated with poor oral hygiene, oral infections, and decreased saliva production means dehydration. Decreased saliva production, poor oral hygiene, and oral infection. So, these are the three etiologies of the peritonitis. Number first, poor oral hygiene, oral infection, and decreased saliva production. Now, the common causative bacteria are Staphylococcus aureus. This is gram-positive organism. Staphylococcus aureus is the main culprit which causes the peritonitis, and it is a gram-positive organism. Once there is the peritonitis, and what will be the signs symptoms? Now, symptoms include will be not produced by the parotid gland. So there will be the dehydration, chills, will be the fast heartbeat and breathing if the infection is causing sepsis. Now, treatment is usually antibiotics, but before doing the antibiotics, you must take the pus from the duct of the parotid gland and send it for culture and sensory. This is the major problem which we are facing. That we do not take the sample from the, even the student does not show that it. So if the examiner asks you what will be the treatment of the peritonitis, your first answer should be that I will take the swab from the parotid duct from the oral cavity and send for culture and sensitivity. Now incidence of peritonitis. Incidence of peritonitis has been reported to be 0.1 to 0.02% all hospital admissions and 0.02 to 0.04% of post-operative patients. Because post-operative patients usually are dehydrated. Post-operative patient, acute bacterial peritonitis occurs mostly in neonates and in elderly persons with systemic illness or after surgery. The types, these are the onset, maybe acute, chronic, based on causative agents, bacterial peritonitis, viral peritonitis. So types, acute based on the onset, whether it's acute or chronic, and based on the causative agents, maybe bacterial peritonitis or the viral peritonitis. Now the causes, usually causative organism is the Staphylococcus aureus is the most common bacterial pathogen. It is a gram-positive organism. Viral peritonitis is more common worldwide than bacterial peritonitis. Acute viral peritonitis, these are known mumps. Acute viral peritonitis are mumps. The most common viral cause of peritonitis is mumps. Routine vaccination have dropped the incidence of mumps to a very low level. Mumps resolve on its own in about 10 days. A viral infection caused by the paramyxovirus. Mumps caused by the paramyxovirus, a single-stranded RNA virus. So it is the RNA virus, single-stranded, which causes the peritonitis. Now, common symptoms include fever, headache, bilateral or unilateral parotitis, swelling of the parotid gland on one or both sides of face. The parotid gland is usually swollen and tender. Parotid swelling usually occurs at 16 to 18 days after exposure to the virus. Parotid gland is usually swollen and tender. Parotid swelling usually occurs at 16 to 18 days after exposure to the virus. Now, treatment includes isolation and therefore prevention of spread of the disease and supportive measures such as hot or cold packs. Hot or cold packs will give the patient remediate from the pain, reduces the pain. Mumps usually resolve itself and can be prevented by vaccination. So patient must get the isolated and to prevent the spread of the disease because it's a viral one. Now parotitis is extrapulmonary tuberculosis. The mycobacterium that causes tuberculosis can also cause parotid infection. Parotid swelling can be an uncommon symptom of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. TB outside the lungs known as extrapulmonary tuberculosis. The usual symptoms are a cough, fever, weight loss, shortness of breath, chest pain, tiredness, and chills. These are the symptoms of the tuberculosis. HIV parotitis, generalized lymphadenopathy, has long been associated with HIV, but the localized enlargement of the gland is less well known. HIV-associated silver gland disease can involve many diseases, but often present as enlargement of the gland and dry mouth. Causes have not been specifically identified, but the most likely are viral, opportunistic, and autoimmune response. Virus linked to this can include hepatitis C, cytomegalovirus, paramyxovirus, influenza A, adenovirus. Treatment is antiretroviral therapy. Now the blockage of the main product. Blockage of the main parotid duct or one of its branches is often a primary cause of acute parotitis. I have told you that a parotid duct or extension duct which opens into the oral cavity is the main culprit. The blockage of the parotid duct or one of its branches often a primary cause of acute parotitis. Blockage may be from a salivary stone, sometimes you have the stones. Blockage may be from a salivary stone or a mucopus when the salivary gland become infected, so there is the mucous pus or mucus plug or more rarely by a tumor, usually the benign. Other causes can be duct structure, narrowing of the duct, maybe due to infection or the injury. Sometimes you have the road traffic incidents. So duct structure, narrowing the duct, infection or injury. Symptoms may include recurrent swelling, pain and aggravation during eating. Recurrent swelling, pain and aggravation during eating. This is when saliva production is stimulated. During when patient eats, they of the parotid gland because of increased production during the eating. Duct obstruction may cause less saliva flow, which can result in recurrent gland infection. Autoimmune causes chronic inflammation of the salivary glands may also an autoimmune disease known as Jagna syndrome. So Jagna syndrome is very, very important. Either you will get the short essay or certain BCQs. So the Jagna syndrome is autoimmune disease. It's chronic inflammation of the salivary glands may also an autoimmune disease known as Jagna syndrome. The disease most commonly appears in people aged 40 to 60 years, but it may affect small children. The cause is unknown. The syndrome is often characterized by excessive dryness in the eyes due to involvement of the your gland which produces the tears, the lacrimal sac, lacrimal gland. So causes are known. The syndrome is often characterized by excessive dryness in the eyes due to affection of the lacrimal gland. Then the mouth and nose due to involvement of the salivary glands, vagina and the skin due to involvement of the mucous glands. Mesenteric hypertrophy because the parotid duct just comes over the surface of the masseter muscle. Now, mesenteric hypertrophy, enlargement of masseter muscle, volume can present a special swelling in the parotid gland area and may be confused with true parotid gland swelling. A specific cause of mesenteric hypertrophy is still unclear, but it may be related to affluent due to the road traffic accidents and tooth grinding. Now, treatment option can include surgical removal of some of the muscle or botulinum toxin type injection. So, botulinum decreases the bulk of the muscle, it is a toxin. Now, the risk factors: chronic alcohol consumption, diabetes, long-term steroid use, HIV infection, and the kidney failure. These are the risk factors. Chronic alcohol consumption, diabetes, long-term alcohol use, HIV infection, and kidney failure. Predisposing conditions: dehydration, malnutrition, immunosuppression, dental infections, tracheostomy, medication that suppresses the salivary flow. Now the serum and urinary amylase raised during the first week of peritonitis. Serum amylase is raised during the first week of peritonitis. You can go for the CT scan to localize the disease, and MRI is also done for the localization of soft tissue tumors. Treatment is adequate hydration. Hydration is very, very important. Adequate hydration, antimicrobial therapy after culture and sensitivity. Antibiotics should be administered intravenously. Anti-staphylococcus antibiotics, neficillin, itracillin, cefazolin. Now, nursing management provides adequate rest to the patient, psychological support to the patient, administered prescribed medication to the patient, maintain the antibiotic therapy of the patient, maintain the fluid balance of the patient. Thank you very much. Now next time we will touch the submandibular salivary gland, its anatomy and its diseases and treatment. Any question please?
I want to know more about this dehydration. How this dehydration causes the peritonitis?
How dehydration causes the peritonitis? That's your question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, okay. Well, thank you very much. Picture लगाया. Now, if you see the picture of parotid gland, very important question that how dehydration causes the peritonitis. Very, very important. Now, if you see the parotid gland, now this is the extension duct or the parotid duct. Now, when there is a dehydration, dehydration causes the orodental hygiene very poor because the normal commensal of the oral cavity like the staphylococcus they stay in the oral cavity, but these are washed away in the secretions. But in case of dehydration, what happens? There is a stay of the mucus which has been there in the oral cavity and it comes from mucous glands. That becomes very, very thick. And number two, the debris which come from the oral cavity, these are not washed away because the oral cavity is lined by your epithelium, and epithelium is shaded away. Millions of epithelium are being shaded away from the oral cavity and goes down and replaced by new one. So what happens? So these shaded epithelium, thick mucus, that block the opening of the parotid duct. And this blockage of this opening of product causes the enlargement of the parotid gland, stay of the secretion in the parotid gland that invites the bacteria. Number two, due to the less amount of the secretion due to dehydration, your staphylococcus or the normal comments of the commensal of bacteria of oral cavity, they does not washed away, so they stay in the oral cavity and they enter into the extension duct and travel easily towards the parotid gland and causes the perotitis. Number third, due to the dehydration, there is the accumulation of the phosphate in the parotid duct and which causes the perotitis. So dehydration has the multiple branch attack over the parotid due to the traveling of the bacteria from oral cavity, due to blockage of the parotid opening by the mucous plug which has become very thick, or blockage of the opening of the parotid duct by the defoliated epithelium or shaded epithelium which does not wash away and get the block. Number two, due to dehydration, there is the deposition of the phosphate, which normally is present in your parotid gland and causes the blockage of the parotid. So this leads to the perotitis. Are you satisfied?
Sir, my last, yes,
Okay.
sir,
Any
my
other
last
questions,
question is
please?
how we can have differentiate the viral or the bacterial perotitis. If any
Very good.
patient comes to the clinic, then how we can have the
Very
symptoms
good.
about this
How you
viral or
will
symptoms.
differentiate the viral perotitis from the bacterial perotitis?
Yes, sir. How we can differentiate the symptoms of patients.
In the patient, how you will differentiate viral perotitis from the bacterial perotitis? That's your question. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, yes, okay. You see viral perotitis and bacterial perotitis. If you go to the picture of the parotid gland, now this is the parotid gland and this is extension duct. Now virus either is the DNA or RNA and bacteria is a living organism. Now bacteria travels through the oral cavity through this parotid duct and causes the suppuration in the parotid gland. Suppuration in the parotid gland, so it is very painful phenomena. It is very painful phenomena where the virus either it comes through the blood circulation or it comes from the oral cavity. Usually it comes from the parotid circulation and involve the parotid gland. So there is a diffuse enlargement of the parotid gland and it is also a painful but it is a less painful as compared to the bacterial perotitis. Number two, in bacterial perotitis, if it is suppurative, if you just press the parotid gland, it will be a soft palpation, whereas in viral perotitis it's not soft, it is just a you can say it is a form in palpation. Number three, the sign symptoms of the acute perotitis. Number first, pain is much more as compared to the virus. Number two, as there the bacteria are inside the parotid gland and facial nerve is there. Sometimes you will get the facial paralysis or facial weakness. Whereas in case of symptoms like the high grade fever, chills, and difficult to move the temporomandibular joint. You see, this is the external canal. Just here, you have the temporomandibular joint, a mandible between the joint between the mandible and the temporal bone. So you hear temporomandibular joint, restricted movement of temporal mandibular joint perotitis, where as in viral it is mild one. So there are a lot of difference of the sign symptom. In case of acute perotitis of bacterial origin, sign symptoms are very severe. Whereas in case of viral perotitis, sign symptoms are very minimal. Number two, over the opening of the parotid duct. This is parotid duct. In case of viral perotitis, only you will see the swelling over the opening of the parotid duct in the oral cavity. Whereas in bacterial infections, the opening of parotid duct, it contains the pus. This is very important sign. Or the opening of the parotid duct in the oral cavity, it has the pus in bacterial perotitis, whereas in viral perotitis only it has the swelling. I think you got my point. Another question?
Yes, sir. But I have also told about the viral have bilateral swelling and the bacterial have unilateral swelling. I also differentiate this bacterial and the
You,
viral perotitis.
you see the bacteria that comes from the oral cavity and it usually involves the one parotid gland. Virus can involve one parotid, but usually bilateral because it's systemic disease. Virus comes from systemic region. Either it comes through the blood circulation or through the nose, but it's a system. It involves the systems. So mumps is usually bilateral, but it can be unilateral. And the bacterial infection, it may be bilateral. It's not it can involve only one, but usually it is unilateral. Both parotids can be involved in both diseases. Yes.
Sir, you
Okay,
told
okay,
about
sir,
the
thank you.
lymphatics, sir.
Yes. Yes.
You said about the you give a name about some CA that it will spread to the lymphatics of the parotid gland. What kind of CA was that?
You see, it said the disease of the parotid gland, which are these, like the mucoepidermide carcinomas, they are adenoma carcinomas, they are. These are the carcinomas of the parotid gland itself, because it has mucous glands, the follicular cells. So mucoepidermide carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, adenocyst carcinomas of the parotid gland itself. But sometimes there are secondaries. Secondaries usually comes sometimes from even testes. Secondaries comes from the chest region to the lymphatic channels. Secondaries from the carcinomas of ear. Secondaries from the carcinoma neck. Secondaries from the carcinoma of the oral cavity. Secondaries from the carcinoma nasopharynx. So secondaries are usually due to the lymphatic channels because the parotid gland has the lymph nodes. Any question, please? Okay.
No, sir. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Sir,
Then next time we'll discuss the
sir,
salivary gland. Yes, yes.
sir,
Next time
when we
we'll
do
discuss
the
salivary
surgery like
gland.
the appendectomy,
Yes,
sir, when we do
yes.
the surgery of gland like as a appendectomy,
When we do the
sir, surgery appendectomy,
when we do the surgery. Yeah, you see, the surgery is always done in case of the tumors, like the benign tumors, like the pleomorphic adenoma. So when there are the tumors, when we will do the surgery. But in case of the viral parotitis and case of the bacterial parotitis, we will go for only conservative treatment. Surgery is looked at when there are the tumors, whether it is benign or the malignant. Okay, thank you very much. Next time we'll discuss the submandibular salivary gland and its diseases. Thank you very much.